Hello, everyone. My name is Hugh Ellenwood. I'm the Archives Manager at the White Rock Museum and Archives. Welcome to another White Rock Museum and Archives video presentation. It's municipal election season in BC, so this video is going to be a quiz about elections in White Rock. But first, here's a little bit of history. Surrey was incorporated in 1879 and divided into 5 wards. Each ward was represented by a single councillor, with the mayor, or reeve, as the chair of the council. In 1948, the ward boundaries were redrawn to include 7 wards. Ward number 7 would eventually become the city of White Rock. The desire to secede from Surrey had been present in White Rock since the 1920s, but it wasn't until the 1950s that independence became a reality. On December 15, 1956, a referendum was held in Surrey to determine if White Rock could secede and incorporate. The result was very close, but the yes vote won the day. On January 5, 1957, a provisional council was established by the BC Department of Municipal Affairs in anticipation of incorporation, which happened at 12:01 a.m. on April 15th, 1957. The statutory council meeting was held later that day. Former White Rock City Councillor Vin Coyne was there. And Vin Coyne joins us now. Thanks for doing this, Vin.
Thanks, Hugh.
You were there 65 years ago at the very first council meeting. What are your memories of that meeting? Could you describe it for us?
Well, it was in mid-April. The Provisional Council had been appointed to serve until there was a civic election that fall. Yeah. And Charles M. Defoe was the Provisional Mayor. He'd headed up the Incorporation Committee, and he was a former city editor at the Vancouver Sun, and at the time City Incorporated, he was Director of Public Relations for the Pacific National Exhibition. So that's how it all began, and it was it had been very divisive, the whole issue of incorporation. There'd been those opposed very strongly, headed by John Hines, who would later become the mayor of White Rock, a rather unusual situation, and he was anti-incorporation, and there was 2 committees, and they really went at it in those days, and it was a very divisive issue.
Well, that was my next question to you. What was the mood in the city generally?
Very, very divided.
Yeah.
The mood was split. There was those who were very much opposed to it, and those that were very much in favor. And in between fell everyone else, sort of, to see what was going to happen. But it came about, there'd been a straw vote, and Surrey Council, there'd been a vote, and Surrey Council said, well, that wasn't a plebiscite, that was just a straw vote, it doesn't count, because it narrowly passed throughout Surrey that White Rock could go on its own.
What's a straw vote?
A straw vote is just, you ask people where they stand on something.
Oh, okay.
A plebiscite is binding, that's legal.
Illegal, okay.
Okay, so at that time, White Rock was part of Surrey, and Surrey had voted in favor of letting White Rock go, but Surrey Council wasn't having any of it until Tom Irwin, who was the Speaker of the House and a great social creditor and a very good friend of Premier W.A.C. Bennett, introduced a private member's bill on a Friday afternoon in the legislature to create the city of White Rock. And everybody was waiting to get away, get the ferries back to the mainland for the weekend, so it sailed through, and it was on the radio Saturday morning at 8 o'clock that White Rock was now a city.
You were at that meeting.
I was at the meeting. I used to cover White Rock. I used to cover Surrey Council for the Semi-Annual Sun. Yes. And at that time, it broke away. I was a young reporter at the Semi-Annual Sun, later the White Rock Sun, and that's how it all began, with Tom Irwin pushing that through, and Surrey Council tried to block it, but it sailed on.
Well, you must have absorbed the atmosphere of the meeting, because you went on to be one of the longest serving elected officials in White Rock's history. So if anyone knows the answer to my next question, it's you. What does it take to be a successful politician in White Rock?
Well, first of all, the old adage, to thy own self be true, because you've got to have your own principles and standards. And after that, the success is listening to the people. I always made sure that I was listening to what people felt. Not the NIMBYs, the people who were against everything, regardless, and they moved here and they don't want anyone else to move here. But I stood for controlled growth.
Yes.
And you wouldn't know it today by the high-rises, but that's what I was for. I always stood on that, and I always got re-elected for 23 years on that sort of premise. And the success is, of course, is listening and being attuned to where people want to be.
Yeah. Well, Vin Coyne, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hugh. Pleasure to be here.
White Rock's first election was held on September 19th, 1957, and the first elected mayor and council were sworn in on October 1st. At that time, municipal elections were held every year, and the mayor was elected to a 2-year term. There were 6 seats on council, and those who placed first, second, and third in number of votes were elected to 2-year terms. The other 3 served 1-year terms. Elections were scheduled once a year to replace those whose terms were ending. This cumbersome system remained in place until 1990, when it was changed to elections every 3 years with equal term lengths, and then finally to 4-year terms in 2014. Okay, let's get started with the quiz. We're going to start with some straightforward questions. Question number 1. Who was the first elected mayor of White Rock? Was it A, Charles Defieux, B, Harry Douglas, or C, William Hodgson? Start the clock. The answer is C, William Hodgson. He was elected mayor of White Rock in the city's first election on September 19th, 1957. But he actually became mayor a few months earlier when he replaced the first provisional mayor of White Rock, Charles Defieux. Defieux had been appointed mayor by an incorporation committee in January, but was never elected by the public and resigned after 6 months due to health reasons. Bill Hodgson served as mayor for 1 term and was defeated by Harry Douglas in the 1959 election. Douglas, who was mayor throughout the 1960s, was a fiscal conservative who, after his time in office, sided with the amalgamation movement in favor of White Rock rejoining Surrey, feeling that the city was too small to be viable. Question number 2. Who was the first female mayor of White Rock? Was it A, Judy Forster, B, Jessie Lee, or C, Catherine Ferguson? Start the clock. The answer is A, Judy Forster. After several terms as councillor, Judy Forster was elected mayor in 2002 and served 2 terms, resigning in 2008. The election of Catherine Ferguson as mayor in the same year ushered in a strong period for women on White Rock Council. For the next 2 years, 4 out of 7 council members were women. Jessie Lee was never mayor, but she was on White Rock Council at the very beginning. Elected in 1957, she served on council until 1964. Question number 3. Who is the longest-serving municipal politician in White Rock's history? Is it A, Gordon Hogue, B, Vin Coyne, or C. James Coleridge? The answer is B. Vin Coyne. Vin Coyne was first elected to council in 1968, served a 2-year term, then was re-elected in 1975, and served continuously until 1996, for a total of 23 years in office. In addition to his long service to council, Vin had a career as a journalist and editor, and as an executive at Finning. He's also a prominent local historian, writing many articles for newspapers and magazines. White Rock's second longest-serving politician is James Coleridge, who served on council for 21 years between 1983 and 2009. Third place is a tie between Gordon Hogue and Doug McLean, who both served on council for 18 years, including 10 years as mayor for Gordon Hogue. Question number 4. Who is the longest-serving female politician in White Rock history? Is it A. Margaret Lower, B. Judy Forster, or C. Helen Fathers? The answer is B. Judy Forster. Not only is she the first woman to be elected mayor of White Rock, she is also the longest-serving female politician, serving as councillor from 1990 to 2002 and as mayor from 2002 to 2008, for a total of 18 years. Helen Fathers comes in second, serving on council for 14 years, from 2008 to 2022. Margaret Lower is third, serving for 12 years between 1977 and 1990. Her election ended a 13-year absence of women on council from 1964 to 1977. Question number 5. Over the course of its history as a city, White Rock has had 7 by-elections, but only once has the politician who triggered the election by resigning been re-elected in the by-election. Who is the only politician in White Rock history to be re-elected in a by-election? Is it A. Sharon Charles, B. James Coleridge, or C. William Taylor? The answer is A. Sharon Charles. Sharon Charles has the distinction of being the first Indigenous person elected to White Rock City Council. She was elected to a 3-year term in 1990, but resigned in 1991 when her graphics company was awarded a contract with the city, and it was deemed a conflict of interest. 2 months later, she was returned to office by winning the by-election, which was held on June 15th, 1991. James Coleridge's election to council in November 2008 was quashed by the BC Supreme Court in May 2009 after he admitted to lying about the source of pre-election emails denouncing his opponents in the election. He remains the only White Rock politician to be removed from office by court order. The vacant seat was won by Grant Meyer in the by-election held in November 2009. William Taylor was the first White Rock politician to die in office. His death led to a by-election in 1965 won by Jack Hines. There have been 3 deaths in office in White Rock history: William Taylor in 1965, Mary Wade Anderson in 2012, and Helen Fathers in February of 2022. Question number 6. We know from our country's Prime Minister that the desire to run for public office can run in the family. But this has been quite rare in White Rock. In fact, only once since incorporation have two members of the same family been elected to council. Name the father and child who both served on White Rock Council. Is it A, Ron and Al Campbell, B, Arnold and Mary Mickelson, or C, Hal and Lynn Sinclair? Start the clock. The answer is C, Hal and Lynn Sinclair. Hal Sinclair was on council for 11 years between 1970 and 1982. His daughter Lynn Sinclair was a councillor for 7 years between 2008 and 2018. Ron Campbell and Al Campbell both served on city council, Ron from 1964 to 66 and Al from 2008 to 2014, but they were unrelated. Mary Mickelson was on council from 1995 to 2002, but her husband, the renowned artist Arnold Mickelson, never ran for office. If you want to learn more about Arnold and Mary Mickelson, you can watch the White Rock Museum and Archives quiz video on the arts that we published on YouTube last year. Question number 7. Since 1993, people elected to White Rock City Council have been called councillors. What were council members called before 1993? Was it A, Reeves, B, wards, or C, aldermen? Start the clock. The answer is C, alderman. The single-gender term alderman was dropped for the more inclusive councillor in time for the election in 1993. Before White Rock's incorporation in 1957, when Surrey was using the ward system, members of the municipal council each represented a single geographical area known as a ward, just like ridings in federal and provincial elections. The chair of the municipal council was known as the Reeve. In fact, White Rock resident H.T. Thrift was Reeve of Surrey in 1891. Question number 8. Who is the only person to have served on all levels of government for White Rock? Councillor, Mayor, MLA, and MP. Is it A, Lorne Ginther, B, Gordon Hogue, or C, Ken Jones? Start the clock. The answer is B, Gordon Hogue. He served as an alderman from 1975 to 1983, mayor of White Rock from 1983 to 1993, MLA for South Surrey White Rock from 1993 to 2017, and MP from 2017 to 2019. And Gordon Hogue joins us now. Thanks for doing this, Gordy.
It's a pleasure, Hugh. It's always nice to have to look into your face.
You've served on all levels of government for White Rock, councillor, mayor, MLA, MP. Could you describe for us how the challenges and responsibilities differ at each level?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, and certainly at the local level, where it actually impacts the population on a day-to-day basis. Yet the voter turnout in local elections are 30 to 40%. The turnout at the MLA level, the provincial level, is 60%, and MP 70%. Yet those are much further away from what happens at the local level. what's exciting about the local level is you get to work to put the platform together. You get to do those things. Whereas at a provincial level, you're part of a party, and they do all of the planning, and then you become part of that platform as you do federally, and you're able to influence that and reflect those values, and you're able to disagree at different points in time. But if you run on a platform that has some specifics in it, then the population votes for you with the assumption that you're going to follow through on that. So those are sort of broad-based perspectives. What's neat about the local level is you actually have daily contact with the electorate, with the people you report to. And I think sometimes that at the federal level, some of the things you're dealing with are so far removed from most people. Some of them get passionate about some of those, and the same thing at a little more so at the provincial level, but at the local level, it's a daily thing that you're running into, you're talking to, you're engaged with people. So it's a really connected sense of what democracy is, and would like to see in a more broad-based way.
It's ironic then that the voter turnout is inverse to that, isn't it? Yeah.
It's somewhat ironic, yes, but I guess so the information people receive, whether they're receiving it through social media or through television, but the television news that they watch, and that's about national, and it's not about local, the local issues, so that they may not have that type of daily contact from a media perspective, but certainly from a local perspective, they know when their garbage is being picked up, and whether or not the water is flowing, and what's happening with their streets, and their zoning, those type of things. But they're intermittent. As long as they're going well, that people just don't seem to care as much about those things that they read about in the national papers or in the provincial papers, or that they see on the news each day.
Yeah. Well, in your long service to White Rock, do you feel that there's anything that was a missed achievement for you? Is there any goal that just slipped through your fingers?
Well, funny you should say that. When Expo 86 was here, and I was having discussions with BNSF around wanting to build the promenade, and we at one point were trying to build a promenade all the way around through Surrey to Crescent Beach to really open up the area. So I had meetings with I think he was the vice president for Western North America. I actually met him across the street at a restaurant here, and we talked about this, and he said, "You've got to be crazy if you think that we any railway, would support having a walkway, a promenade next to the railway." So I said, well, I've got examples of the number of people that have been killed by trains here because it wasn't safe. I can remember my dad coming home with blood all over him after he and people were down picking up somebody that had been killed. And that was, so I said, so you can be the pariah of our community if you choose to not allow this, but we can make it much safer. People walk on the tracks now, we can get them off the tracks. We can put some, and here it comes, and we could put some fencing, we could make it safer. So he agreed that we could do it from the pier to Vital Street to check it out. And we were able to get from Expo all the bricks there and all of the benches. So that was wonderful to be able to do all that. And a little bit more to that story, we had enough, and we had some federal funding, we had enough to go down to Bay Street. So I remember I made a decision that we would go to Bay Street, and then he phoned me and said, well, that wasn't the agreement. I said, but it's working, isn't it? And he said, yes, it is. So, and then obviously we got to do it on the south side, heading east. But a couple of other things, I wanted to get at Expo 86, there was a pier that looked like a ship with sails and things on it. I wanted to get that and cover the breakwater with it. So you could get out to the end of the breakwater, you have a place to sit, we could have little performances out there, you could have washrooms and sails, so you didn't just see the rocks, but you could see it looked like a sailing ship out there. So I thought that would have been neat. And the other thing that we had a really good deal on was the gondola that was at Expo, and I was wanting to run that down, and actually I had Chip Barrett, who was an architect, and he designed a little platform, so we saw it coming down just a little bit to the west of the White Rock, over top of Marine Drive, on a landing place where people could take, so again, freeing up some of the challenges that we have with respect to parking. But also having a neat process, being able to have a garden way down. So those were two things that I took to council, but they seemed...
Didn't quite work out.
Well, it seemed so expensive in those days, but if you look back now, it was pretty inexpensive in terms of what was. But those are two things that we worked on. There were lots of other things, but they kind of, those two stick out.
Well, what's the achievement that you're most proud of, if you could pick one?
Well, I think the promenade,
Yeah.
because I remember the Chamber of Commerce was so opposed to it in the initial going because it was going to take all of their traffic from in front of their stores way over to the other side, so it's going to reduce their business. But they got, within about 2 months, it was all their idea. It wasn't my idea anymore because it had really increased so many more people down here that there was so much more traffic, and so all of the restaurants and the businesses were actually increased. So exactly the inverse of what they thought would happen did happen. More people came and we were able to put parking in as well and to charge for parking, so it gave us a bit of an income. And of course all of that has been with BNSF is also, there's a lease with them, so they're making some money through that process as well. So, but it turned out to be quite well. But I remember the all candidates meeting where somebody asked me and I said, I've got this idea about a promenade, and I remember, I won't say who, but a girl I'd gone to school, her mother stood up in the middle of it and said, "Oh, Gordon, you've lived here all your life. How could you ruin our city like that?" And so that was the first public response I got to that idea.
Gordon Hogue, thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me be part of your day.
Question number 9. Who is the only mayor of White Rock who also served as the city's chief administrative officer? Is it A, Bill Lawrence, B, Hardy Staub, or C, Wayne Baldwin? Start the clock. The answer is C, Wayne Baldwin. When he retired in 2006, Wayne Baldwin had been the City of White Rock's city manager for 23 years. He ran for office in 2011 and was elected mayor twice, serving from 2011 to 2018. Hardy Staub was mayor of White Rock from 1993 to 2002 and had a long career as an airline pilot. Bill Lawrence has never been mayor, but was elected to council for 2 terms from 2012 to 2018, and he has the distinction of being the first black person elected to White Rock City Council. Okay, here's the final question. Question number 10. What do White Rock mayors Harry Douglas and Gordon Hogue have in common? A, they were both born and raised in White Rock. B, they both served terms as alderman and as mayor. Or C, they both won an election by acclamation. Start the clock. The answer is C. They both won an election for mayor by acclamation. Harry Douglas in 1963 and Gordon Hogue in 1987. Winning an election by acclamation means that there was no opposition. Gordon Hogue was born and raised in White Rock and served as an alderman for 8 years before becoming mayor. Harry Douglas was born in New Brunswick and never served as an alderman, only as mayor from 1959 to 1969. That's it for our quiz on elections. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you had fun. I'm Hugh Ellenwood. This has been a White Rock Museum and Archives presentation.